We are on chapter 17 and we're on the last section, the family life of birds. God ordained that birds, like other creatures, should reproduce after their kind. Among the familiar sights and sounds of springtime are those that accompany the return of the songbirds from warmer climates. As the birds prepare to raise their young, they stake out their territory by singing, displaying beautiful plumage to attract potential mates, and build nests to protect their eggs. The family life of birds is a fascinating example of God's divine design and provision for his living creation. So, hey, the migration of birds are pretty much of a mystery. And so who taught the birds to migrate, and their instinct, that God has put this instinct inside of them. What is migration? Migration is the annual movement to another region. And most songbirds go from summer to winter. And they always go in a northern and southern direction. The Arctic tern travels 28,000 miles from north to south. That's the longest migration. The red-winged blackbird brings huge flocks from north and south. They gather together in huge flocks and travel. And so do geese, in fact. The hummingbird goes nonstop from Mexico to South America. That's a long journey for a tiny hummingbird, don't you think? The golden plover goes from Canada to South America. So these are all different kinds of birds that are migrating. And a lot of different ones. Some don't migrate, but most do in some way migrate from north to south, never east to west usually. And what is the flock? What's a flock of birds? That's when they gather together so they could go on their migration, right? So let's go over here. There's some about migrating. It says, much scientific investigation has gone into learning what causes and controls bird migrations, but we do not yet have a complete explanation. We do know the following. Migrating birds follow the same routes year after year, and they call these routes flyways. And they have a keen sense of direction and recognition of landmarks. So they recognize these landmarks. The position of the sun and stars may guide the migrating birds as they look at where the stars are. That's magnificent. And the Earth's magnetic field helps them guide them along with certain birds. The timing of migration appears to be influenced both by the bird's internal clock, controlled by the pituitary gland, and by environmental factors such as the weather and the length of the day. So they know when the days are getting short, maybe it's time to migrate, huh? But their pituitary gland actually helps them because they have an instinct of when to go. Migration generally occurs in the spring and fall, probably because they need to go to a warmer climate. And most migration is north and south. In fact, a lot of birds even fly through Israel, as we see in the Bible. So anyway, going on from migration to another amazing phenomenon of birds is their courtship. Their courtship. They have unusual rituals when it comes in different behaviors. First of all, they need to find a mate. Let's see if I can go up here, finding the mate. Okay. First they need to find the mate, and they have a territorial recognition. That means that usually they put their territory out for their females that they're trying to find. And the males, they have color, plumage, song, and they exaggerate many things. As for exaggerating breeding, and many mates breed for life. And some only breed for one season. But the really weird thing I saw here, I don't know, right here it talks about the engagement period. The engagement period may be short or it may be long. What's the engagement period? They get engaged, well, they know that that is their mate, but they don't breed with their mate right away. So in fact, the bearded titmouse takes 1 year. They have wait 1 year before they breed. Wild geese mate the following spring. The albatross mates, it takes 2 years. So they have a mate, they know that's going to be their mate, but they wait for 2 years in order to mate. 2 years engagement. How would you like that? No. Anyway, and then their courtship displays. So the males usually do this in their courtship, and it's dominated by the male, the courtship, and they parade around and they dance and they fly and they dazzle, and this makes them even lose weight. The males even start to lose weight because they're dazzling themselves. And they sing very loud, and some rattle their quills. The peacock dazzles. It has 100 colors, so they're beautiful peacock colors, and it dazzles. And the woodpeckers, they tap on the roofs of trees, or tap on the trees and tap on the roofs of houses. And they like to tap on tin wood roofs so they can make a loud noise. And so also all this affects the female hormones. And so when the hormones of the female are ready, it's time to mate. And so the courtship happens very quickly. They have the sperm, the testes of the sperm to the cloaca of the female, and ovaries and oviducts. Let's go down here so we can see. Go to the next page, I think. So, in fact, let's go down here and I'll put forth the egg here. So the mating, basically the egg expands and albumin's added. Okay, this egg's traveled already here from to the cloaca of the female, from the ovary and the oviduct, the female, to coming out the cloaca. And then the egg there is sitting in. This all might take minutes to months as the sperm migrates to fertilize the egg first, and then as the egg comes out of comes at the end of the oviduct and comes out, it produces this thin membrane, which is a shell. And this shell, it passes over the oviduct as the cloaca, so you have the shell coming, the last thing coming out. So here we have the shell. Shell is a light protein. It's calcium carbonate. It has tiny pores for diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide. The shell is a magnificent breathing device. And then, okay, we have the yolk, and we have this germinal spot. The germinal spot is where the embryo, that little spot is where the embryo is. Tiny chicken or a tiny bird there, right? And the yolk is the fat-rich food that the embryo is going to eat. And then we, of course, have what this is called. This here is called chalaziae. The chalaziae right there. Chalaziae is this weird little thing, and you can see it in some eggs, this twisty thing. Okay, what is this twisty thing? It's a twisted cord in the middle of the abdomen attached to the yolk. It supports the yolk, and it's up, makes the nest, or the egg, so it's upright in the nest, so the germinal spot will always be on the top. So here we have this yolk. It's going to feed the embryo here. We have this thick albumin. Remember I talked about the albumin forming, coming as the albumin extends in the egg before it comes out. This thick, and the thick albumin's on the top here. It's thick, well, it's actually close to the yolk. And then the thin albumin, both of them. And then the outer shell. Oops, we lost it here, so let me go back. Well, there we go. Well, there we go. Let's go back to where we were. We kind of lost it here. Okay, so then we have the outer shell membrane. You have an air chamber in here, and the inner shell membrane, and then the shell. And the shell is a great breathing device. So here you have the shell, the inner membrane, and then the outer membrane, and this thick albumin, the thin albumin, the chalaziae here, and the germinal spot and the yolk. So that is an egg. So let's go on now to nesting. Let me see, I have a picture here. Nesting. So there's a new nest for every brood. That means nesting, and in every nest, they have hundreds of different types of nests. Let's just say that. Let's take this picture of this nesting birds here. We'll just go by, keep that on it. We're talking about nesting. So, so it's an instinct. Ethology is the study of instinct, and nesting surely is an instinct for each bird, different kinds. And a new nest for every brood. They have no set time, no training. They haven't been trained to build nests, you know. And one nest, I mean, it can be different than 1,000 other different kinds of nests. And like you say, there's many different kinds of nests. So let's look at nests. Unlearned knowledge. They possess this instinct at birth. We don't know. God gave it to them. And the purpose is to protect their eggs. So we have different nests. These, we see the weaver bird there, and we see the grebe there, and down to the cliff swallows. They're all different kinds of nests. The grebe are water birds, and their nest floats. You see the floating nest there. Onto swallows. Those cliff swallows, they have mud nests, and so they get their flying insects. See how their nests are with their mud nests. Down to the osprey, which are, live near the shore and lake. They make sure their nests are there. Cliff swallows, they make their nests in the peaks of roofs. And banks make them in banks. Chimney swifts make their nests in chimneys. Orioles, they suspend their nests in tree branches. A tailor-billed bird sews his nest and pierces holes in it for air for their nest. And weaver birds weave their nest. So you can imagine so many different kinds of nests. So going on here. Incubation period. So the incubation means they have to keep their eggs warm, and that they do this for the adult has to sit on the eggs. The eggs have to be at optimal temperature, or else they'll die. They need to be kept warm. The emperor penguin, the air may be 70 degrees or so, or even lower, but the penguin has to keep those eggs at 93 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty warm. And sit on these eggs from 8 to 9 weeks. Night and day, sitting on these eggs. They lose feathers on their belly, and this is their brood patch, where they put against their skin these eggs. And this is very dermis rich, kind of a spongy blood vessel that when they're sitting on their nests with their eggs, it looks like it's inflamed, but it's actually keeping those eggs warm. Songbirds lay 3 to 6 eggs, and they hatch in 14 days. So they only have to sit on them for like 14 days, but some, a lot, 8 to 9 weeks for the penguin. Both the male and female in some species sit on the eggs. So even the males and female take turns. And they may even turn their eggs around so they get warm on all sides. And they hold off, some hold off as for their eggs, try to get their eggs so they're going to all hatch about the same time. So they're holding off when the eggs come at the same time, so they're not at different times. Hold off until the eggs are all there. There's a couple words down here, and you see in the corner. I'll put them down here. You see altrical and precocial. So altrical, actually it's pronounced altricial, or altricial and precocial. So altricial and precocial. Altricial means they're naked and helpless, and their parents feed them because they're naked and helpless. By contrast, the chicks of a quail, fowl, ducks, and most water birds are precocial. They're covered with down and able to swim almost immediately after hatching. So just know that some the babies are very naked, and they have to keep these babies and feed them and take care of them. Altricial ones are. And then the precocial are able to get out of their nest and go. So, like sometimes the parents will swallow the food and eat the food and put it and store it in their crop, in their throat. Remember we talked about the crop? And they'll regurgitate it up and then they'll give it to their, after it's thrown back up, they give it to their babies, to their little chicks. So penguins and pelicans, they'll plunge deep into their parents' gullet, and pull out different food from their gullet or crop, you know, penguins. Doves and pigeons, they have this milk, crop milk, which has protein and fat that they feed their youngs from their throat, from their crop area. Crop milk, they call it. The flamingo has only fluids in their, put the fluids in their digestive tract and regurgitate these fluids to feed their young. Marsh hawks, they drop mice in midair for their young to catch, to get them out of the nest. So can you believe, to get the birds out of their nest, the hawks will like drop the mice and then maybe drop their young to fly and catch the mice in the air. That's kind of weird. They kick them out of their nest. The bald eagles will kick them out of their nest and hope that they can fly, and they gotta fly. And then they'll teach them how to hunt, and they'll play with sticks and even show their, the hawks and eagles will show their young how to gather hunting talents. So that's pretty amazing. Talks about the crop milk. That's that milk in the crop that they feed them, certain, especially doves and pigeons. There. Birds and private property. Okay, bird territories. So birds get jealous of their territory. You can see there, you have two birds there. The one goose is chasing off the next, right? This reduces overcrowding. Isolation. They want to be isolated so they can keep enough food for themselves, and to disperse them so that newcomers, when they come, they can find their own territory, right? So the larger the bird, the larger the territory. Birds in the desert have large territories too, because the desert's huge, right? They don't have a lot of food in the desert. And the volume of the voice. So the louder the voice, it keeps more territory for the birds, if the birds have a loud voice to keep the other birds away. And some birds live in colonies, and the colonies, if they live in a colony, they have a smaller territory. So let's see, I think there's a picture of there. So you know that birds have territories. This is the last section here. So here we go. Here's some territorial birds. You see the blue jay trying to take over the water, take over the bird feeder. And have you ever seen hummingbirds fighting over their territory? I have. So here we have the black-headed gull has like a 1 foot territory. The meadowlark has a territory of 22 acres. A red-tailed hawk has a territory of 325 acres. That's a lot of territory. The golden eagle has a territory of 22,000 acres, which is like 35 miles. So if you'll find one golden eagle and territory as being 35 miles, that's a big territory. So they go from very small territories to very large territories. And they defend their territories with their songs or their visual display, as we see in these cases here, especially with the blue jay there. Rarely they fight. Blue jays will fight, but rarely they fight, but they sure squawk loud. So the yellow wagtail puffs out his breast. The red-winged blackbird, if you take the blackbird's red wing and you cover up the red wing, then it will die, because it needs that red wing in telling its territory or telling other birds what their territory is. The robin runs and then pauses, runs and pauses. That keeps the birds away. And then the mockingbird dances about to keep birds away. So they have different things they do to keep their territory. And some have large territories. It is amazing. Do you think how amazing, some people think, oh, we evolved. You definitely can't think about evolving when it comes to all these things, as migration could never evolve, or all of these different territories, the birds' territories, or the incubation periods, or the type of nests they're doing, or onto the different mating, they're finding a mate in their courtship and in their mating habits. All are different and unique. God is so unique. And so, when you think of evolution, it's very, very dead and very, very false, because God has made each bird after its own kind. So that's the end of the bird chapter.